On the night of the wedding, the husband's mind was damaged. His head started hitting the wall hard. Father-in-law came and took me to his room. Now, every night I sleep with him, and when I was in a deep sleep, every married man must watch this video. And if you like, please share it with friends. I thought a lot about my husband. My hair will be shaved, my jewelry will be taken off, he will tell me fond sentences, but nothing like this had happened. But my husband started hitting his head in the wall like crazy. I was crying over my luck. Suddenly, my father-in-law sat near me, but I did not know that he slowly patted my head and consoled me that you do not need to worry. Everything will be fine. I am not with you. I did not understand at all what they wanted to say at that time. Their style was very kind. I considered them like my father, but I did not know that they did not understand me as their daughter, but something else. I immediately turned away from them with a jerk and looked at them with frightened eyes. They said that you are dressed in a very heavy dress. These ornaments will also be hurting you. That is why I wanted to lighten your burden. I picked up and went to his own bathroom, and after a while, Gudiabaji brought me a comfortable dress. And she gave it and left quietly. I was very upset about why I was being left like this in my father-in-law's room. His daughter did not give any response and just gave me a suit and left. I quietly wanted to free myself from these clothes and go to my husband's room, but my father-in-law grabbed my hand. And he said, "There is no need to go to Shamir's room. You do not know that he is not in his senses at all. Lest someone pick up a heavy object and hit you on the head and you end up there, so it is better that you spend the night in my room." I felt a little right about them. Anyway, I was looking at them from the point of view of the father, so quietly went to one side of the bed and slept. I will sleep on the sofa in front of me, but to my surprise, my father-in-law also came and lay down next to me. "Uncle, you will sleep here." Was there a wonder in my voice? He said, "No matter what, I am like your father. You can sleep with me here. We are both mahrams for each other." In the morning, when my eyes opened, I was lying very close to my father-in-law. I woke up from him with shock and immediately closed in the washroom. My mother-in-law also got up early in the morning on the first night of the wedding and immediately went to the bathroom. I immediately came to the glass and started drying my hair because now I had to go out while my father-in-law went to the bathroom smiling. I was still stuck in my husband that what has happened to him due to which he is in this condition. But they just looked at me and hid back next to the doll Baji. They made me sit next to them with a gesture. After a while, I made breakfast. So I put the demand of going to my house in front of them because I could not spend the whole life with such a person. I wanted what was hidden from us. But my father-in-law sat near me. My heart was shocked. I started thinking, what is happening to me? I felt my father-in-law's eyes completely changed. I was feeling a shame and hesitation from him. He sat right next to me and took my hand in his hands. Seeing everything, my tears started to stand up. My heart was beating at the speed of 100, but I was unable to say anything because when I asked them to lie away from themselves at night, they said that I am your mahram. I was silenced. I knew that if I still say something like this, they will silence me by saying the same thing. And at that time, the doll Baji was also sitting. And my husband was silent thinking of this. He slowly shook my hand and said, "Look, I know it is difficult for you to accept all this, but you have this. We have to accept everything. We have given a huge amount of money to your parents. In exchange for this, your parents got you married to my son." Hearing this, I came to the brink of sin. It seemed as if the roof of the house had fallen on my head. What is the meaning of saying that my parents have sold me to you people? On hearing this, they shook their heads in denial and said, "No, your parents have not sold you. We have told your parents that Shamir is not well in mind, but they had no objection. In return, we gave them 5 lakh rupees with which your parents married you." We have told you that tears started flowing from my eyes all of a sudden. My father-in-law, who was still caressing my hand, now had his hand on my cheek. He wiped my tears and said, "You don't have to cry. Your tears are hurting me." I wanted to hear all these things from my husband, but these things were being said by my father-in-law. I immediately got up from him and went to my room where I was stayed at night. Where did I get stuck? I was very angry with my parents who sold me for 5 lakh rupees. I did not know what to do. Where should I go and tell my sorrow? After a while, the door of the room opened. It seemed. "Benish, why are you shaking yourself? Everyone's luck is not the same. Your luck was also slightly different." While I could not bear their closeness, I wanted to see them from this point of view. They were also very handsome, like a son. and their frequent approach to me was melting my emotions. I don't know why the failed desire that was growing in me was trying to keep all the things aside and cling to them, but I was stopping myself that it was a sin, but I did not know why I also felt that I was married to him. I immediately got up from him and said, "Don't you come near me. Why are you coming close to me again and again and touching me?" They said, "I am not touching you with excuses. I am making you realize that you have your own here, and I am also your mahram. I am not getting any sin by touching you." While I was listening to them and seeing how they are talking, I did not give them any response. I was still crying over my condition. I did not know where I was stuck. He went out of the room after a while. I was still in my father-in-law's room. The day passed according to my speed. 2 or 3 times, Gudiabaji came inside the room and placed food in front of me, but I did not even bother to see the food. There were no guests nor any movement. Everything was happening quietly. My husband was in his room. My father-in-law was out of the house. My mother-in-law had passed away a long time ago. I knew that after a few days, Gudiabaji would go to her house. Then I did not know what would happen. I was lying down and thinking about his words all day that suddenly the door of the room opened and my father-in-law entered the room. I immediately got up from my place, they said. I was just coming that a child was selling gajras on the way. I thought that I will also take it for you. I will wear it in your hand. While I was looking at them in amazement, but I would forbid them before they put them in my hands. I lost my hands and watched what was happening to me, why my father-in-law was doing everything that my husband should do. I was still thinking about these things that my father-in-law entered the room and said, "Lie down, it's night, then you have to sleep." While I lay down with my head shaken in a mechanical way, and he also lay down next to me after a while. I immediately woke up, but my father-in-law was sleeping with both his hands on his chest. I shook my attention and went back to sleep. After a while, I felt once again as if someone was touching my stomach with a hand. This time, I felt 2 hands. My friends told me that the first night of marriage means a lot to every woman, and the night of the wedding is very beautiful. All the men appreciate the beauty of their women, make them realize how beautiful they are. I was also expecting all these things from my husband, but I did not know how my life is going to change today. The things that I was going to hear from my husband's mouth, today I will hear those things from my father-in-law's mouth. I was sitting inside the room, decorating the sage of my husband's name. My heart was beating in his name. My breath was very scattered. I was just waiting for my husband to come. After a while, my wait was over. His height, his size, his color was very beautiful. For a moment, I was surprised to see my husband. I was jealous, sitting on my fate. When my cousins got married, I made a lot of fun by seeing their husbands, that how these people are in seeing. Where did I tell my cousins that how did you people marry such viewers? And today when I saw my groom, I was very jealous of my fate because my husband was a very handsome man in the room. He entered and turned his eyes around. His attitude was a little strange, which was forcing me to laugh. But I sat quietly with my own beats under control. He came to Mashari, walking step by step, and looking at me said, "You are my bride, and I am your groom." And she looked at her husband. She opened the buttons in front of her sherwani. Her hair was scattered. Her hair was scattered. She seemed to be a small child. I did not understand what all this was like. At once, he stopped and looked at me intently, and he came very close to me so much that both of us started to breathe. He suddenly put his lips on my forehead and once again started clapping loudly. "You are my bride! You are my bride!" I was worried now because I could not understand anything. The husband stopped clapping and started crying loudly and said, "No, Dalbaji had said that you are my bride, but no, you did not like me." "I do not like you, Dalbaji." Dalbaji was his elder sister. I knew him very well. This man was talking about my sister-in-law. Suddenly, he went to the wall and his head was loud. I stood up from my place in panic because my hands and feet were swollen in a big way. My husband was completely crazy. He was not aware of what he was doing. Blood also started coming out of his head. I was stopping him. "What are you doing? What is happening to you?" But he was not listening to anyone at all. The only thing was being considered that I want a doll baji. I do not want a bride. "You go from here." Suddenly, the door of my room opened and my father-in-law entered the room. My father-in-law also looked very younger than his age. He was around 60 years old, but he had made himself in such a way that he did not even look like 40. I looked at him with frightened eyes and said nervously that, "Uncle, see what has happened to him. I do not know why he is hitting his head in the wall." I took a look and came close to me and grabbed my hand. My heart stopped suddenly. I felt my breath stopped. Suddenly, my father-in-law grabbed my hand and took me out of the room while I was trying to make him realize this again and again. That his son is hitting his head in the wall. "Where are you taking me?" But he showed me his eyes and told me to remain silent and started going to his room. My father-in-law brought me to his room and made me sit on the bed. He said, "You don't need to worry. You don't need to worry. You will see the doll." While tears started flashing in my eyes, I was crying over my fate. My husband was crazy, and I came to know this on the first night of marriage. My daughter-in-law is sitting inside the room crying. I looked at her and said, "That uncle has done all this. Why was Shamir doing such things?" He looked at me and said that sometimes he has seizures, so sometimes he comes in such a situation. "You do not need to worry, the doll has gone. She will give him medicine, then he will be fine." If Shamir was not mentally fit, then why didn't you inform us about it when my father-in-law looked at me and did not know in one of his eyes that I sat on the bed completely silent? I remembered the moment when I saw my husband's picture, and on that picture I became obsessed with him and started envying my fate that the relationship of such a beautiful man had come for me. But now I was realizing that my cousin was better. The husband was not suitable to see, but they were mentally fine. I had so much desire in my heart that my husband would praise me as soon as he came into the room. In my sleep that night, I felt someone touching me. Suddenly, my eyes fell down from the bed, so I was stunned because my husband was hiding there. When I saw him, he started showing me to be silent while I was sometimes looking at my husband. Sometimes I was looking at my father-in-law. I did not understand what was happening. Looking at her husband, he said in a loud voice, "What are you doing here?" And what is this way, hearing my voice to lift me? My father-in-law got up and he turned on the light of the room. My husband was looking at his father with frightened eyes while my father-in-law looked at me and my husband and said, "What has happened, Shamir? What are you doing here?" "She'll stay with me in my room." "Not with you. They said that your bride was sent to your room. But you yourself were hitting the head in the wall like crazy. So what would I have done?" "That is why I had brought your bride to my room." Before my father-in-law could say anything, I stood up from my place and said, "I am ready to walk with you because I had to live with my husband and not with my father-in-law, and while living with him, I had a strange knot." After bringing me to the room, my husband was looking at me, and as he looked, he said, "You are very beautiful. These hairs of yours, these eyes of yours look like you are absolutely artificial, like a doll." I was very beautiful to see. He was actually speaking correctly. My eyes were like glass. My hair was golden. I was silently looking at my husband. I thought I would take my husband to life. I chose a very good doctor the very next day and started seeing him. My father-in-law used to try very hard to come close to me. He also wanted to touch me with excuses. But I used to get away from him immediately because I was my husband's trust. I could not betray his trust at all because they had no shortage of money. The husband did not pay attention to the son, just did not take care of his youth. He says that the man is never old. He had the same cycle with my father-in-law. Sometimes when my husband had a seizure, I would immediately go to my sister-in-law's room and sleep in his room. But after a few years of hard work, my husband had become much better. If he controls his self, he can do anything. If he protects himself as the trust of his mahram, then he will always be read in life. Because if a woman does not want, no one can come close to her.